Hey guys, we're talking to you today a little bit about coping skills. If you don't know what that is, we're going to explain, but life happens to all of us, adults, kids, leaders, all the way down. And just life just happens sometimes. And a coping skill is anything you can use to help you with the emotional distress that sometimes life brings. A coping skill is not a solution to a problem, but it helps us to manage our own emotions until a solution to a problem becomes more readily available. It's kind of an in the meantime thing that we can use just to be able to handle what life throws at us. So there's a variety of different kinds of coping skills, and we're going to dig into that a little bit more today. But there are coping skills that distract you from your situation. Get your mind off of maybe something that's stressing you out. A good example of that would be when you get home on a Friday night watching a movie, or going and hanging out with friends and doing some of the fun things that you enjoy doing with friends. Those are distracting coping skills. There's other kinds too, like ones that are calming. So this could be doing yoga. This could be doing some deep breathing, or it could be taking a nap on a Saturday afternoon. Just get your mind off everything, calm down, shut the world out, and close your eyes for a little bit. Another type of coping skill would just be expressing things you would do to get out what's going on. We all know that we can't hold in our emotions too long, or else there are bad effects to that. It can turn into an explosion, and then you're having arguments or fights or things like that. Or it can turn into more of an implosion, where you've held it in so long that you start to notice your mood is going down, and you may even be struggling with some depression type symptoms. And so we don't want to hold in those emotions. So an expression type coping skill would be something like writing in a journal, or talking to a friend or a trusted adult. Or even going for a really long run, because that expels some stress and energy that way too.
I know for me personally, growing up and athletics being very important to me, so just getting out and doing something physical. I always had a basketball in my car. If I was having a bad day, there was a church down the road from my house with a basketball court. I was going to end up at that basketball court with that ball, shooting and just getting away from everything for a little bit. I've had friends who are runners, and they'll go out for a run. And then again, going back to journaling, I know plenty of people who love music, and so maybe it's playing their own music, picking up a guitar or an instrument, and just taking time to kind of escape through that.
I love that. And I think for each person, they have their own personality, they have their own things that they like. Here in a minute, your teacher's going to guide you through some steps to be exposed to a lot of coping skills, and then you can pick the ones that fit your personality the best, because everyone is different and we're all different in what we need. What I like to suggest is that you have sort of this tool belt of about 10 coping skills. And that way you have a good variety to pull from in all environments. I think that's something that you have to consider when you're picking a coping skill is, what environment are you in? What about for school, Mark? Could you give us maybe some examples of good coping skills while you're in the school building?
Yeah, absolutely. Because most of the examples I just gave, that's not going to be ideal for on a school setting. I couldn't, start running in the middle of class. Probably not a good idea. And so, as we're sitting in the classroom, if I'm having a hard time, or maybe in the cafeteria during lunch and it's loud and there's a lot going on, that idea of journaling, of pulling out that spiral and just kind of writing through thoughts and things, or maybe you like poetry, and so you're writing a poem, but you're putting your thoughts and the things you're going through to paper, from pen to paper. That can be a really good idea. Talking things out. Sometimes you just have a really good friend, someone that you can trust, someone that I'm not walking around telling everybody my business, but those people that are the closest to me, that I know they're not going to go around sharing those things, that I could lean on them and say, man, I just need to talk through some stuff I'm struggling with right now. And it doesn't always mean that you're looking for a solution or you're looking for them to fix it. And you can even tell them that up front, like I'm not looking for, I just need to talk through this. And sometimes that can be a great resource. I think one of the things that's important for us to touch on is the important or the distinction between healthy and unhealthy coping skills, because that does exist. And all of you have coping skills you use whether you realize it or not. And so as we begin to talk about healthy versus unhealthy, an easy way to think through that and try to separate the two categories by asking yourself, what's the cost here? What's the cost? Because every coping skill, there's some sort of cost. Me picking up my basketball, it was going to take time, but that was definitely time I was willing to use for that. There was physical exertion involved. It was a workout, but again, it's something that I was okay with. That's a cost. There's a benefit, a positive benefit to it, but it's still a cost. My body was tired afterwards, and so those are things to consider. And as I look at coping skills, I'm going to ask myself, what's the cost, and is this cost worth it? And so some unhealthy coping skills might be drug abuse or alcohol. It could be things like self-injury. And so in those situations, and I look at them and I say, well, what's the cost? Well, with self-injury, obviously there's physical harm to my body. There could be accidentally, maybe not the intent, but severe harm to myself, even a possibility that it could be life-threatening. And so those are major costs that I would need to consider. Not only that, but loved ones being concerned about me and worried, the stress that causes them. If we're talking about the choice of using drugs or alcohol to try to cope with things we're dealing with, again, what's the cost? Well, one, it's illegal. So there's the possibility of having to deal with the repercussions of that if I'm caught. Again, my parents and how they're going to respond, or other loved ones, how will they respond in that?
One thing, I'm just going to chime in. One thing that a lot of people don't know about drug use, sometimes they're using it to cope and to forget, but it actually can rev up mental health issues. And people often don't know that. So that's a real negative side effect. It can mess with those chemicals in your brain and actually ramp up depression and anxiety for you. So there's definitely a lot of cost involved in that one.
Yeah. So I think, again, as we look at coping skills and you look at this list that you're going to be given to go through, I mean, these are obviously, we're giving you as a resource. These are positive coping skills. But as you think about what you already have, there may be others that you think of that aren't on that list, but you currently use. I think that's the question I would follow that up with. Okay, so would I consider this healthy or unhealthy? And if it falls under that healthy range, keep doing it. And if it's unhealthy, then maybe you look at that list that your teacher's going to give you and you see, okay, what can I substitute this with? What could I put in place of what I'm currently doing that probably isn't best for me?
Will you talk a little bit, Mark, about some of the cost involved with the self-injury, since you mentioned that example? Like what's the cost there?
Yeah, I mean, going back to that, like I said, of course, you've got the physical toll that could take. I mean, the possibility of maybe I'm not trying to take my life or do something to that extreme, and yet accidentally I do something that it could possibly be life-threatening. And so that for sure. But going on, there's possibility of hospitalization down the road. There's possibility of, obviously, if there's anything I'm doing like cutting or burning or something that could be lead to scarring that then I've got to deal with the rest of my life. And again, like we said, just loved ones being concerned and them dealing with that. And then moving forward, that's a process of working through how to find other coping skills to substitute for that. So it's definitely not an avenue I would want students dipping their toes into, because it can be difficult coming back from that and finding other coping skills that help you. So
Yeah, I think anytime you're talking about some of these more negative coping skills, there's potential with a lot of them for addiction. That's another concern. And so I think in general, and why we really wanted to explain that in depth is, ideally you choose some coping skills that benefit you in some way and don't take anything from you, and definitely don't create more problems for you, because the goal of a good coping skill is it helps you with those problems, or even it gives you a break from your problems, but it doesn't create more problems. If you've chosen a coping skill that's good, then it's not creating more problems for you. I've often heard, well, my coping skills aren't working. And one of the things I like to share about that is the goal isn't to take the emotional distress. If you're at a 10 on the distress level, right, you're at a max distress, the goal of a coping skill isn't going to make it go to 0. That's not realistic. But we could bring it down to a 6 or a 5, which is much more manageable. You can manage anger at that level, or you can manage anxiety at that level, where maybe 10 is just too much. The coping skill is going to take the edge off of some of that distress for you. The other thing to think about when picking a appropriate coping skill for your situation, not just choosing the environment, but also considering your own emotional state. If you are at a maximum anger level, right, that is probably not the best time to choose to go talk it out. You want to calm down first. You want to get that anger a little bit managed, maybe to a 5 or a 4 or even below. You want to be calm before you're going and trying to have a conversation, just mainly because it's going to be more productive that way. You don't want to have a conversation heated. It just doesn't work. If you've tried it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So there's a lot to think through in picking your coping skill, but you just want to pick one that fits your personality and one that's right for you.
one last thing we want to make sure we don't forget to mention about is, I kind of brought up earlier, and that is if you find yourself kind of stuck, you're trapped and you're using an unhealthy coping skill, and you're kind of stuck in that rut and you can't figure out a way out. We want to really encourage you to find a trusted adult. That could be somebody on campus, that could be a fine arts director, a teacher, a coach, your counselor, or an administrator that you know well, and just letting them know what you're dealing with. There's also times when these struggles just become a little too much. They become overwhelming, and coping skills aren't enough. It's not working. And even though they're positive, they're healthy, it's not helping us to get out of that. And so if you find yourself at a place where you're having negative thoughts, you're having thoughts of hurting yourself, possibly taking your life, or hurting someone else, those types of things, we want to encourage you to get the help you need. Again, find a trusted adult that you can confide that information in, that they can get you help. We're going to provide you with resources, a number you can text, or suicide hotline that you can call that are available 24/7. And so we definitely want to encourage you, reach out, ask for help. There's lots of people that care. There's lots of people that are here to support you, and we want you to take advantage of that.
Okay, we're going to turn it over to your teachers now, and they're going to guide you in a little bit of an activity, but we're glad to have been able to talk to you today. Have a great day.